Hi, my name is Bailey Gramz, and for my scenario this year, I have done research on witch hunts that have happened throughout history, including the Salem Witch Trials and the Satanic Panic in the 80s. In this video, I have created a PowerPoint that presents the information I have found regarding these topics, what connects them, and what led them to happen in the first place. If you decide to continue watching, I hope you enjoy. This begins my presentation on witch hunts that have happened throughout history. Research by me, Bailey Gramz. What this scenario is about. As you know, this year for my scenario, I have done research on witch hunts that have happened throughout history. I've always wanted to learn more about the Salem Witch Trials, and this year seemed like a perfect opportunity to do so. Though I felt the need to expand my project a bit to include something relevant to today. That is why I decided to go in depth on how people got to the point where they were accusing others of witchcraft and worshiping the devil, then because of these accusations, imprisoning them or executing them by hanging, which was often the case during the Salem Witch Trials. These accusations came from fear and ignorance toward witches, which can be seen today through the disdain some have for certain marginalized groups. This fear and ignorance leads to discrimination, suppression, and harm to these people, which is why it is so important to talk about and take note of. What is a witch hunt? A witch hunt is a noun that, in the historical sense, means a search for and subsequent prosecution of a supposed witch, and in the informal sense, a campaign directed against a person or group holding unorthodox or unpopular views, as seen by Google definitions. I will be using both forms of the word interchangeably during my presentation. To state it plainly, any time in history a push was initiated against someone with unpopular views, it can be called a witch hunt, which is why both the Salem Witch Trials and the Satanic Panic can be labeled as a mass witch hunt. This can also go for the Red Scare during the early to mid 1900s and specific aspects of the AIDS epidemic. The Salem Witch Trials. Witch hunts were first popular in Europe from the mid-14,000s to the 16,000s. As the witch hysteria in Europe died down, it began to pick up in the New World. The Salem Witch Trials in Salem, Massachusetts are some of the most well-known trials. These trials began when two young girls started suffering from fits and uncontrollable screaming, as stated by www.history.com. Today it is believed that they were poisoned by a fungus that caused spasms and delusions. More people gained these symptoms, and mass hysteria followed. 3 women were convicted of witchcraft, one of which cracked under the stress, confessed, and accused others of black magic. A total of around 150 people were accused, and 18 were put to death. I have found that more often than not, the witches of these trials, or the victims, never even practiced witchcraft, though even if they did, it is not something to warrant execution, since most witches, Wiccans, avoid evil and the appearance of evil at all costs. Their motto is to harm none, and they strive to live in a peaceful, tolerant, and balanced life in tune with nature and humanity. This quote was taken from an article titled History of Witches on www.history.com. Accusing these mostly women of practicing this thought to be evil craft was derived from a place of fear and ignorance many had about the Wiccan religion. The Satanic Ritual Hysteria. The Satanic Ritual Hysteria, or the Satanic Panic, was a time of mass hysteria and false allegations of ritual abuse in the 1980s. It was the belief of many Americans that Satanists were everywhere and were probably plotting to harm their children. This fear was a combination of a rise in sadism in the United States and the troubling Manson murders in 1969. These events, along with a couple books written on the topic, planted a fear in the heads of many Christian Americans, one that would eventually cause mass panic and a string of accusations, putting many innocent people in jail and ruining lives. Though it wasn't all bad. For the game Dungeons & Dragons, the fact that people believed the game had instructions for carrying out occult rituals quadrupled its sales. For heavy metal, the idea believed by many Christians that the songs in the genre contained secret messages that would brainwash anyone into becoming a Satanist might have saved rock and roll, making it more known to the mainstream media. Though it did conjure up some nasty stereotypes from the people that listened to it. While on the other side of things, in California, a parent accused staff at McMartin Preschool of abusing their children. The investigation included an unlicensed psychotherapist, and unlicensed assistants, as stated by both www.grunge.com and groovyhistory.com. This along with some questionable, probably traumatizing methods of questioning the kids involved, and claims such as the teachers could fly, the case led to nothing as there was not enough evidence to convict anyone. The trial was one of the most expensive cases in California history, as stated by groovyhistory.com. Along with the Martin case, there were more serious cases of accused individuals being falsely imprisoned. This includes Damon Echoes, who was sentenced to death for the murder of 3 young boys. Luckily, since then, he and the 2 men accused with him have been released from prison. According to groovyhistory.com, members of law enforcement, therapists, and prosecutors sent more than 20 people to jail with no substantial evidence, but with a hefty dose of fear of ritual sadism. What led people to this point? As mentioned in both previous slides, one major thing that led people to the extreme behavior and thoughts that they had during these times of hysteria was fear. When you know very little about a topic, and what you do know is a jumble of horror stories about the apparent terrors this thing has caused, you tend to get scared. Unfortunately, fear can lead to rash decisions, especially when everyone around you is feeling the same. So fear and ignorance about these different religions had a large part to play in why people went to such extremes. You don't feel so bad about burning someone at the stake or accusing them of performing occult rituals if you believe that they were living embodiments of evil and eat children. These fears and thoughts can also be tied back to other major religions, for example, Christianity. Religion has a big hold over a community, and when something is depicted as a threat to the holy and normal way of life, it can be scrutinized and in this case create fear around it that can lead to mass hysteria. Why this is relevant today. This way of being and the fear created by some religious beliefs has not escaped us today, though it has not led to major mass hysteria in the past years. This fear is still present and can do major harm to the communities it surrounds. People today still don't fully understand what the Wiccan religion entails, or that it is a religion at all. And there are still stereotypes around about rock and roll. Now people are allowed to think what they want, but it becomes a bit of an issue when these beliefs impose on the lives of others. If people just fact-checked what they thought and heard or tried to understand others before forming these negative opinions on them, maybe there wouldn't be such a divide between groups, and maybe the untrue stigmas attached to some would finally go away, or at least lessen. Thank you very much for watching if you stuck around to this point. I hope you've learned something from my presentation on witch hunts and the connection they have toward the misunderstanding and discrimination of marginalized groups today. Thank you very much for watching.